The holographic message flickered before Alex Reyes, bathing the small apartment in an ethereal blue glow. The spectral figure of a gaunt, reptilian alien in formal attire adjusted what appeared to be spectacles on its elongated snout. "Greetings, Alex Reyes of Earth," the figure said, its voice a curious mixture of growl and chime. "I am Vox Leth, legal executor for interplanetary estates at Galactic Frontier Legal Associates. I regret to inform you of the passing of your grandmother, Mare Quinn of the Crystalline Houses." Alex stared, mouth slightly agape. The grandmother they barely remembered, the one who had visited Earth only a handful of times during their childhood, leaving whispers of fantastic tales and impossible places. "As her sole heir," Vox Leth continued, "you have been bequeathed her primary residence on the planet Farim 4 in the Outer Rim territories. The property includes all contents and associated rights." The hologram paused, its slitted eyes narrowing. "I must caution you. However, what you find inside may challenge everything you believe." The message ended with coordinates and transport arrangements. Alex sat in silence, a forgotten cup of coffee growing cold in their hands. Memories surfaced. A tall, willowy figure with iridescent skin telling stories of worlds where houses grew from seeds, where memories could be stored in crystals, where entire civilizations lived beneath the sand. Child's tales. Alex had eventually decided. The fantastical imaginings of a lonely child with an eccentric, rarely present grandmother. But now, Alex's eyes drifted to the small shelf of academic achievements, diplomas in xenobiology, certifications in exo-evolutionary theory, years spent trying to understand the universe through science, through rational thought and empirical evidence. And yet, a small box remained tucked away in their bottom drawer, containing trinkets from those brief visits. A crystal that hummed when touched. A vial of sand that changed color with the phases of Earth's moon. 3 weeks later, Alex's transport pod punctured the atmosphere of Farim 4, descending through banks of copper-colored clouds. The cabin windows filled with swirling ochre as the craft navigated a sudden sandstorm, the particles pattering against the hull like impatient fingers. When the sand cleared, Alex gasped. Twin suns, one a blazing white diamond, the other a smoldering crimson orb, hung low over an endless expanse of desert. Red rock mesas jutted from the landscape like the vertebrae of some colossal buried creature. Heat ripples distorted the horizon, making the distant mountains seem to dance. "Approaching destination," announced the pod's navigation system. "Please prepare for landing." As the craft descended, a structure emerged from between two massive dunes. It rose like a crystalline obelisk, half buried in drift, its surfaces catching the dual sunlight and fracturing it into 1,000 prismatic beams. It wasn't a house in any conventional sense, more like a massive geode that had erupted from the planet's crust, its facets polished to mirror brightness. The transport pod settled on a flat expanse of hardened sand. As the hatch depressurized with a hiss, Alex was struck by a wall of heat, dry and intense, but somehow not unbearable. The air smelled of mineral deposits and something sweeter, almost like cinnamon. Standing before the crystal structure, duffel bag in hand, Alex felt impossibly small. The building's entrance, a tall, oval aperture, seemed to shift and pulse with hidden energies. There was no visible door, just an opening that shimmered like the surface of water. Taking a deep breath, Alex stepped forward. The shimmering surface parted like a curtain, cool against their skin for just a moment before they passed through. What greeted them inside stole the breath from their lungs. The interior walls shifted colors like the surface of a soap bubble, iridescent patterns flowing across them in hypnotic waves. Organic vines pulsated with bioluminescence, coiling along the ceiling and down the corridors, responding to Alex's presence by brightening subtly. A whispered echo, not quite sound, not quite thought, seemed to greet them, though the words were indistinct. "Hello?" Alex called, voice sounding flat and primitive against the house's organic symphony. No response came, but the lights pulsed once, as if in acknowledgement. The central chamber expanded around them, the ceiling soaring upward into a perfect dome. Floating furniture, cushions that seemed to hover a foot above the floor, tables that rotated slowly as if suspended in invisible water, dotted the space. And at the center of it all, atop a pedestal of what appeared to be living coral, floated a small, ornate box. It rotated slowly, suspended in a column of light. Its surface was engraved with intricate patterns, culminating in a symbol Alex recognized immediately. An Ouroboros serpent, devouring its own tail, entwined with a many-pointed star. Grandmother's emblem. Alex approached cautiously, scientific training warring with childlike wonder. This was advanced biotechnology, far beyond anything taught at Earth's most prestigious universities. The integration of living tissue with architectural elements, the manipulation of gravitational fields, the responsive luminescence. It all spoke of engineering principles that humanity had only theorized about. As Alex reached for the floating box, the whispered echo grew louder, almost forming words. The house was speaking, in its way, watching, waiting. This was only the beginning of what would prove to be the most extraordinary discovery of Alex's life, the most dangerous. Far Rim the Four was not a planet for the unprepared. Beyond the crystalline walls of Mer Queen's house, the desert world revealed itself as an ecosystem of beautiful extremes. The next morning, Alex ventured outside, equipped with basic survival gear and scientific instruments. The twin suns had barely crested the eastern dunes, yet already the temperature approached levels that would be dangerous on Earth. Only the house's adaptive garment, a gift left by Vox Leth, kept Alex comfortable, its fibers adjusting constantly to maintain optimal body temperature. The landscape that had seemed barren from above revealed its secrets at ground level. Glass-like succulents dotted the dunes, their transparent bodies refracting sunlight into dazzling spectrums. Crystal cacti grew in clusters, exuding a fragrant sap that hung in the air like perfume. When the wind shifted, carrying sand across their surfaces, they emitted tones like distant wind chimes. A sudden gust brought a new sound, a low humming, growing louder. Alex turned to see a small convoy approaching from the west. They rode what appeared to be elongated crafts, like surfboards made of chitinous material, skimming just above the surface of the sand. Their bodies were wrapped in flowing fabrics that billowed behind them, catching the desert winds to propel them forward. The Wind Sailors. Alex had read about them in the brief planetary guide provided during the journey. Nomadic tribes that navigated Far Rim's endless deserts, harvesting rare resources and trading between the scattered settlements. The lead sailor slowed as they approached, their craft pivoting gracefully before coming to a stop 10 meters from Alex. The figure was tall and lean, skin a deep bronze that seemed almost metallic in the sunlight. Their eyes were covered by protective goggles, and a breathing apparatus masked the lower half of their face. "You are the heir," the Wind Sailor said, removing the mask to reveal features that were strikingly human, save for the subtle ridge of scales that ran along the jawline. "Word travels fast through the singing sands." "I'm Alex Reyes," Alex confirmed, extending a hand in the universal gesture of greeting. "And you are?" "Tariq," the Wind Sailor replied, clasping Alex's forearm in a firm grip. "I was a friend to Mer Queen. She spoke of you." Alex's surprise must have been evident, for Tariq's expression softened. "She spoke of you often," he continued. "The grandchild, with eyes that asked too many questions. The one who would someday understand." Before Alex could ask what that meant, a distant rumble interrupted the conversation. Both turned to see a massive form breaking the surface of the sand far to the south, a colossal creature breaching the dunes like a whale through ocean waves, its crystalline hide catching the sunlight before it dove back beneath the surface. disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Sand whale, Tarek said reverently. Once common, now rare. The deep miners drove them to the far wastes. He turned back to Alex, his expression grave. Your grandmother protected them. One of many reasons the wind sailors honored her. I hardly knew her, Alex admitted. She visited Earth only a few times when I was young. Tariq nodded, as if this explained something. Mare Quinn's work took her across the galaxy. She was a mediator between species, a keeper of memories that might otherwise be lost. He gestured toward the crystalline house. That structure is more than a dwelling. It is a living archive, the last of its kind. Living? Alex asked. Scientific curiosity piqued. The house grows. It learns. It remembers. Tariq's voice took on a cautionary tone. It judges those who enter. Mare Quinn was its partner, not its master. A sudden gust of wind sent a shower of sand cascading down a nearby dune. Tariq looked up, reading something in the movement that was invisible to Alex's untrained eye. Storm approaching, he said, securing his breathing mask. Dangerous for those not born to the desert. We will speak again. He hesitated, then added, Be cautious with what you find inside. Not all knowledge is meant for all minds. With that cryptic warning, Tarek returned to his wind sailor and rejoined his companions. Within moments, the entire convoy had vanished behind a rising dune, leaving Alex alone with the singing crystal cacti and the distant rumble of what might have been another sand whale, or perhaps the approaching storm. Back inside the house, Alex found that the structure had shifted subtly during their absence. Corridors had rearranged, new chambers had opened, and the central room now featured a pool of what appeared to be liquid crystal, reflecting not the ceiling above, but impossible vistas of worlds Alex had never seen. The floating box remained, patient and enigmatic, at the center of it all. Alex Reyes had not come to Farim 4 unprepared. As a xenobiologist specializing in adaptive evolutionary systems, they had encountered their share of biological marvels across various research expeditions. But nothing in their academic training had prepared them for the legacy Mare Quinn had left behind. At 26, Alex had already established a reputation as a rising star in the field, brilliant but skeptical, driven by scientific rationalism and empirical evidence. Their thesis on convergent evolution in hostile environments had earned accolades from the Interplanetary Academy of Sciences, and their research on bioadaptive architecture had attracted attention from both academic institutions and corporate interests. It was this latter work that had consumed Alex's recent years, leaving little time for personal connections or reflection on the strange childhood memories of an alien grandmother who seemed more myth than reality. Until the holographic message arrived. Now, standing before the floating box in Mare Quinn's sentient house, Alex confronted the gap between scientific knowledge and personal history. The child who had sat wide-eyed as grandmother told impossible tales had grown into a scientist who demanded proof, who sought explanations for the inexplicable. Yet grief lingered beneath that rational exterior, grief for a relationship that had never fully formed, for questions never asked, for a heritage barely understood. Alex reached for the box. As their fingers made contact, the ornate container responded, its engravings illuminating with inner light. The Ouroboros symbol pulsed once, twice, and then the box unfolded like a mechanical flower, its segments spreading outward to reveal a crystal at its center. The crystal rose, suspended in the air between Alex's outstretched hands. Within its faceted surface, light coalesced into the image of Mare Quinn, tall and elegant, her iridescent skin catching the light, her eyes deep pools of ancient wisdom. My dear Alex, the hologram spoke, its voice resonating with the same musical quality Alex dimly remembered from childhood. If you are viewing this message, then I have completed my transition to the next realm, and you have accepted my invitation to Farim 4. The image smiled, an expression both alien and familiar. I regret the distance that necessity placed between us during your formative years. Earth was too fragile an environment for prolonged visits, and my duties as keeper prevented me from remaining in any one place for long. But know that I watched your progress with pride, even from afar. Alex felt an unexpected tightness in their throat. The house you now stand in, which I call home, is the culmination of my life's work. It is a repository of knowledge, a living record of cultures that might otherwise be forgotten. It is also, in many ways, an extension of myself. The hologram gestured, and the crystal's projection expanded to show the house from various angles, revealing complexities invisible to the naked eye, root structures extending deep beneath the desert, neural pathways running through the crystalline walls, storage chambers filled with artifacts from 100 worlds. To truly understand what I have left you, you must listen to home. It will communicate in ways that may seem strange to your scientifically trained mind. Through dreams, through shifting environments, through memory projections. Do not resist these communications, but do not surrender your critical faculties either. Merquin's expression grew serious. You are not the only one who knows of this place. Alex, there are those who would exploit its secrets, who would weaponize what was meant to heal. Trust home. Trust the wind sailors, and above all, trust the instincts I know you have inherited from me. The hologram flickered slightly. One final thing. Beneath the house lies its heart, what my people call a world seed. It is both the house's power source and a repository of genetic templates that could transform barren worlds into gardens, or reduce thriving civilizations to ash, if misused. Guard it well. Merquin's image smiled once more, a gesture full of both love and sorrow. Remember, Alex, the greatest legacy we leave is not what we build, but what we choose to preserve. I leave home in your hands. My child, may your journey bring you the understanding I always hoped you would find. The hologram dissolved, the crystal darkened, and Alex was left alone with questions multiplying in their mind. But not entirely alone. As if responding to the message, the house, home, projected fragmented images onto its transparent walls. A much younger Alex sitting on Merquin's lap, listening to stories. Merquin teaching child Alex to identify different crystal formations, the two of them standing beneath Earth's moon. Merquin pointing to distant stars and speaking of worlds Alex would someday see. Memories Alex had forgotten, or perhaps had convinced themselves were merely dreams. The projections faded, leaving Alex with the unsettling realization that the house had been watching, learning, and remembering all along. That it had known Alex before Alex had even arrived. Home was trying to communicate something important, but before Alex could decipher its meaning, a perimeter alarm shattered the moment, a high-pitched tone that set the crystal fixtures vibrating with tension. Someone else had arrived on Farim 44, and according to the house's security protocols, they came heavily armed. The approaching vessel was sleek and predatory, its hull gleaming with military-grade shielding as it descended through Farim 4's atmosphere. Unlike Alex's humble transport pod, this was a private craft, expensive and well-equipped, the kind used by corporate executives or government officials who wished to travel without scrutiny. Alex watched its approach from Home's observation dome, a newly discovered chamber that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding desert. The craft landed with precision, kicking up minimal dust despite its size. Its boarding ramp extended, and from it emerged a small contingent of figures. Leading them was a woman in her early 50s, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe bun, her Earth-standard environmental suit bearing the insignia of Novacorp Biogenetics. Even from a distance, Alex recognized her immediately. Dr. Malin Cho, chair of xenobiological applications at Novacorp and Alex's former academic advisor, the woman who had tried to recruit Alex to the corporate world of applied bioweaponry, and who had become Alex's most vocal critic when they had published research arguing against militarizing biological systems. Flanking her were 4 individuals whose bearing and equipment marked them clearly as private security. Mercenaries, most likely, given the non-standard weapons they carried. "Home," Alex said aloud, still getting used to addressing the house directly. "What are our defensive capabilities?" A series of diagrams appeared on the nearest wall, showing various security protocols. Most were passive: camouflage systems, sensor scramblers, psychic dampers. Nothing that would stop a determined assault with physical weapons. Alex's mind raced. Dr. Cho's presence couldn't be coincidental. The timing suggested she had been monitoring the legal proceedings surrounding Merquin's estate. But how much did she know about what the house contained? The communication system chimed, indicating an incoming transmission. Alex hesitated, then accepted the call. Dr. Cho's face appeared on the wall, her expression a practiced mask of collegial warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Alex, what a delightful surprise," she said, as if their meeting on an obscure desert planet was mere coincidence. "I had no idea you'd developed an interest in frontier real estate." "Dr. Cho," Alex replied, keeping their tone neutral. "I might say the same about you. NovaCorp's interests rarely extend to uninhabited desert worlds." Cho's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Officially, we're conducting a geological survey. Unofficially," she paused, dropping the pretense. "Let's be candid. I know exactly what Merquin's house contains: bio-neural architecture, living memory storage, adaptive environmental interfaces, technology that would revolutionize a dozen industries and solve several pressing military challenges." "And how exactly would you know that?" Alex asked, though they already suspected the answer. "Your grandmother approached NovaCorp 15 years ago, seeking funding for her preservation projects." Cho explained. "We declined, finding her stipulations regarding weaponization too restrictive, but we kept tabs on her work. When we learned of her passing, it seemed an opportune moment to revisit the possibilities. The implication was clear: what Merquin had refused to sell, Cho now intended to take, by negotiation if possible, by force if necessary. "The house isn't for sale," Alex stated firmly. Cho sighed, as if disappointed by a student's poor performance. "Alex, be reasonable. You're a scientist, not a preservationist. What would you even do with such technology? Study it for years, publish a few papers? We can offer you full research access, generous compensation, and appropriate credit when we develop applications. When, not if." The presumption was typical of Cho's approach. "My answer is still no," Alex replied, "and I suggest you depart. This property is legally mine, and your presence without invitation constitutes trespassing." Cho's false warmth vanished entirely. "I had hoped for cooperation, but I came prepared for resistance. You have 1 hour to reconsider. After that, we'll be forced to begin extraction procedures with or without your consent." The transmission ended abruptly. Alex turned to the nearest wall. "Home, show me all available information on Dr. Malin Cho and NovaCorp's current projects." The wall filled with data, scientific papers, corporate filings, news articles. Most damning were classified documents that Merquin had somehow obtained, detailing NovaCorp's development of bioweapons using architecture similar to, but cruder than, home systems. Alex's stomach tightened. If Cho gained access to the house's technology, especially the world seed Merquin had mentioned, the potential for weaponization was terrifying. Before Alex could formulate a plan, another alert sounded. The perimeter sensors had detected a small, fast-moving object approaching from the east, a single wind sailor, racing ahead of a massive sandstorm. Tariq had returned, and just in time. "They will not hesitate to take what they want," Tariq warned, his expression grim as he studied the NovaCorp vessel from the safety of Home's interior. "Your grandmother denied them access for decades. Now they believe their opportunity has come." "Can we defend against them?" Alex asked. Tariq gestured to the house around them. Home has defenses, but activating them requires a deep connection, one Merquin developed over centuries. You have been here less than 2 days. Then we should evacuate. Take what data we can and leave. Tariq shook his head. Home cannot be moved. Its roots extend deep into the planet's crust, drawing energy from the molten core and the world seed. He hesitated. If they obtain that, nowhere in the galaxy would be safe. Alex paced the chamber, frustration mounting. There must be something we can do, some way to make them leave. As if responding to Alex's distress, the house projected a new image on the wall, a detailed map of the surrounding terrain, with a particular area highlighted, a massive dune formation to the north. The Singing Canyon, Tariq explained, recognizing the location. A natural amplifier. During certain storms, the wind creates vibrations that can disable electronic systems for kilometers around. He looked toward the approaching weather front. Like the storm that follows me. Alex understood immediately. If we could lure them into the canyon during the storm, their weapons, their ship, their communication devices, all would fail. Tariq confirmed. But the storm is still hours away, and they threaten action within one. Before Alex could respond, the house trembled. A distant sound of mechanical drilling penetrated the crystalline walls. They've begun already, Alex realized with alarm. Rushing to the observation dome, they saw Dr. Cho's mercenaries setting up what appeared to be a massive boring device. Its diamond-tipped drill aimed at Home's foundation. They're trying to access the root system directly, Alex said, horror mounting as understanding dawned. If they breach the primary conduits, the house shuddered again, more violently this time. The structural vines running along the ceiling retracted defensively, causing a cascade effect throughout the building. Sealed chambers that had previously been locked began to open as the house redirected its energies to protect its core. And with these openings came danger. One particular chamber, now accessible through a passage that hadn't existed minutes before, contained research specimens, spores from a dozen worlds, preserved in stasis fields that were now fluctuating with the house's distress. We must seal that room, Tariq said urgently. The purple spores from the Vex-Thor system, they're deadly to most carbon-based life forms. But it was too late. As they watched, one of the stasis fields collapsed completely, releasing a cloud of luminescent purple particles into the air. The house's filtration system activated immediately, but some spores had already escaped into the ventilation network. Outside, one of the mercenaries screamed as purple dust settled on his exposed skin. The reaction was immediate and horrifying. The affected area blistered, turned necrotic, and began to spread rapidly up his arm. Dr. Cho, Alex called through the communication system. Stop the drilling immediately. You've triggered a defense mechanism that's released toxic spores. On the display, Cho appeared startled but skeptical. A convenient claim. Our sensors detect no biological hazards. Your sensors aren't calibrated for Vex's Thor biology, Alex insisted. Look at your man. The camera shifted to show the affected mercenary, now convulsing as the necrosis spread across his chest. Horror registered on Cho's face as she finally recognized the genuine danger. Cease drilling, she commanded her team. Retreat to the ship and activate quarantine protocols. The mercenaries scrambled to comply, dragging their stricken comrade with them, but the damage to Home had been done. Throughout the structure, systems fluctuated wildly as the house tried to repair itself while containing the spore outbreak. In the midst of this chaos, the central chamber transformed. The pool of liquid crystal expanded, its surface rippling with images that flowed one into another, ancient civilizations rising and falling, desert tribes navigating by stars long extinguished, massive sand whales breaching in pods of hundreds, their crystalline bodies forming a bridge between dunes, and Mare Queen herself, communing with entities composed of pure light. What is this? Alex whispered, transfixed. Home is showing you its purpose, Tariq replied solemnly. It is a repository of memories, not just Merquin's, but the collective memory of countless cultures that would otherwise be forgotten. This is what your grandmother protected. This is why she denied Novacorp access. The revelation struck Alex with the force of physical blow. Home wasn't just a house with advanced biotechnology. It was a living archive of galactic history, preserving knowledge that existed nowhere else. And in its damaged state, it was offering Alex visions of its contents, perhaps as a plea for help. One vision lingered longer than the others. Sand whales gathering around a massive crystal formation, their bodies resonating with the structure until both glowed with harmonized energy. The crystal then extended filaments deep into the planet's crust, drawing up nutrients and distributing them across the barren landscape. Within moments, glass-like vegetation began to sprout, transforming the desert into a crystalline garden. The ecological balance, Alex murmured, understanding dawning. The sand whales aren't just native fauna. They're crucial to the planet's ecosystem. They activate the natural crystals that nourish the soil. Tariq nodded. And their numbers have dwindled as mining operations drove them from their traditional territories. Without them, Farim IV slowly dies. He gestured to the vision. This knowledge alone would be priceless to conservationists and dangerous in the hands of those who value minerals above life. The house shuddered again, more violently this time. The visions vanished as Home redirected its energies to critical systems. It's trying to seal the breach and contain the spores, Alex realized. But it's losing power. A terrible thought occurred. The world seed, could that be affected? Tariq's expression confirmed Alex's fears. The seed is Home's heart. If these invaders have damaged the connections to it. A new alert sounded, different from the others, deeper and more resonant. A holographic display appeared, showing a chamber deep beneath the house's foundations. At its center pulsed a crystalline object the size of a human heart, glowing within a light that fluctuated alarmingly. The world seed is destabilizing, Tariq said, his voice tight with concern. If it fails completely, the results would be catastrophic, not just for Home, but for the entire region. Alex faced a critical decision. The threat from Dr. Cho had been temporarily halted, but she would undoubtedly return once the spore danger was contained. Meanwhile, Home was damaged. The world seed was destabilizing, and Alex possessed only a fraction of the knowledge needed to repair either. Selling the technology, or at least granting Novacorp limited access, would bring immediate wealth that could fund Alex's research for decades. It could pay off the substantial student debt that still lingered from their advanced degrees. It could establish Alex as a broker between academic and corporate interests. But Merquin had chosen a different path. She had preserved knowledge rather than exploiting it, protected balance rather than disrupting it for profit. To betray Merquin's trust is to condemn the planet's future, Tariq said quietly, as if reading Alex's thoughts. She believed you would understand this. She believed you would choose wisely. Before Alex could respond, the house's security system issued a new warning. Dr. Cho's team had retreated to their ship, but they had left behind automated drilling devices that continued to penetrate the foundation. And worse, a second ship was approaching, larger than the first and bearing the unmistakable insignia of Novacorp's military division. The conflict was escalating faster than Alex had anticipated. We need to reach the world seed, Alex decided. If we can stabilize it, perhaps we can use its power to activate Home's defenses. Tariq looked doubtful. The path to the seed chamber is through the root system, the very area they're currently drilling into. Then we'll have to find another way, Alex insisted, turning to the nearest wall. Home, show us all potential routes to the world seed. The house responded with a detailed three-dimensional map, highlighting several possible paths. Most were indeed compromised by the drilling operation or the spore contamination. But one route remained viable, a narrow maintenance conduit that would require them to navigate through some of home's most delicate biological systems. That one, Alex pointed. Can you guide us through it? The house pulsed once in affirmation, and a pathway of bioluminescent light appeared on the floor, leading toward a previously hidden panel in the wall. I hope your grandmother's faith in you was not misplaced, Tariq said as they prepared to descend into the heart of home. For all our sakes. The journey through home's internal systems was like traversing the inside of a living organism. The maintenance conduit pulsed with peristaltic movements, carrying nutrients and information through a network of crystalline veins. Bioluminescent markers guided their way, responding to their presence by brightening as they approached and dimming as they passed. Alex, trained in xenobiology, recognized elements of multiple biological systems from across the galaxy, photosynthetic structures similar to Earth plants, neural networks reminiscent of Centaurian brain coral, protective membranes that resembled Jovian gas filters. The integration was seamless, a testament to Merquin's genius in combining disparate biological technologies into a harmonious whole. Tariq moved with the confidence of someone familiar with the environment, though he admitted he had never ventured this deep into home's infrastructure. Merquin allowed few to access the lower levels, he explained as they navigated a junction where multiple conduits converged. The wind sailors were permitted to shelter in the outer chambers during major storms, but the heart of home was sacred space. A tremor shook the conduit, nearly throwing them against the sensitive walls. Above them, the drilling continued, and with each breach, home's systems grew more erratic. We're running out of time, Alex said, picking up the pace. The conduit widened suddenly, opening into a vast chamber unlike anything Alex had seen before. They stood on a narrow walkway that spiraled around the perimeter of what appeared to be an inverted tower, a massive space that extended both upward to the house proper and downward into the planet's crust. The walls were lined with thousands of crystal formations, each pulsing with its own inner light, each containing what appeared to be a distinct memory or piece of information. Some projected faint holograms as Alex and Tariq passed, snippets of ancient ceremonies, technical diagrams of forgotten machines, star charts showing configurations that had not existed for millennia. The archive, Tariq whispered reverently. The true heart of home. Every crystal contains the complete history and knowledge of a culture or species. Alex stared in awe. The academic value alone was incalculable. Extinct languages, lost technologies, biological information on species long vanished from the galaxy. This was Merquin's true legacy, a library, d'ici, of civilizations preserved for future generations. But even this marvel was showing signs of distress. Throughout the chamber, crystals flickered erratically, some darkening completely as their power supply faltered. The damage from above was affecting the entire system. The world seed must be below, Alex said, noting the concentration of energy flows toward the bottom of the tower. They continued their descent, the spiral walkway leading them ever deeper. The air grew warmer, charged with an energy that made the hair on Alex's arm stand on end. The crystals here were larger, more complex, their contents more fundamental, not the histories of individual cultures, but the underlying principles of life itself. Genetic codes, ecological relationships, the mathematics of growth and adaptation. Finally, the walkway ended at a sealed doorway inscribed with the now familiar Ouroboros and star, Merquin's emblem. Unlike the house's other entries, this one did not respond to their approach. It requires authentication, Tariq said. Merquin's genetic signature, or that of her blood kin. Alex placed a hand on the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the Ouroboros began to glow. The light spreading outward along intricate patterns etched into the door's surface. There was a sensation like a mild electric shock, a moment of discomfort as the system sampled Alex's genetic material, And then the door dissolved, revealing the seed chamber beyond. The chamber was perfectly spherical, its walls composed of a material that seemed to shift between solid crystal and liquid light. At its center, suspended in a column of energy that extended from floor to ceiling, pulsed the world seed, a crystalline structure about the size of a human heart, but infinitely more complex. Within its translucent depths, galaxies seemed to spin. Ecosystems bloomed and faded, civilizations rose and fell in microcosm. It was beautiful beyond words, and terrifying in its power. This was no mere energy source or data storage device. This was a template for worlds, a genetic library containing the blueprints for countless forms of life, coupled with the energy to bring them into being. And it was destabilizing. Fractures had appeared along its surface, pulsing with dangerous energy. The column supporting it fluctuated, struggling to maintain the precise balance needed to contain such power. "What do we do?" Alex asked, overwhelmed by the responsibility. Before Tariq could answer, a new presence made itself known. From the walls of the chamber, a holographic figure coalesced, Merquin, but not the recorded message from earlier. This projection moved with awareness, its eyes focusing on Alex with recognition. Not a recording, Alex realized. A backup consciousness. A fragment only. The hologram corrected, its voice the same musical tone Alex remembered from childhood. "Enough to guide, not to replace. I exist as memory within home. Activated only in dire circumstances." "Grandmother," Alex said, emotion welling unexpectedly. "The house is under attack. The world's seed is destabilizing." "I am aware." The hologram replied solemnly. "The danger is greater than you know. The seed does not merely power home, it maintains the ecological balance of this entire region. If it fails, the crystalline desert will wither. If it is removed, the planet's core will become unstable. And if it is weaponized..." The hologram's expression darkened. Worlds could be unmade. A particularly violent tremor shook the chamber. Above, the sounds of drilling grew louder. "They're almost through to the archive," Tariq warned. "How do we stop them?" Alex demanded. "How do we stabilize the seed?" The hologram of Merquin gestured, and a complex interface appeared in the air before Alex. "The seed responds to the one who tends it. It must recognize you as its new guardian." "I don't know how," Alex admitted. "Your scientific knowledge is a beginning." Merquin's fragment said, "But the seed requires more than intellect. It requires empathy, the ability to perceive the interconnections between all living things." The interface expanded, showing the delicate balance of energy flows through the world seed. Alex recognized the patterns from their xenobiological training: recursive systems, adaptive networks, symbiotic relationships expressed in pure energy. It was like looking at the code underlying reality itself. "I can try to stabilize the physical system," Alex said, analyzing the flows. "But the biorhythmic patterns are too complex for quick analysis." "Then don't analyze," Merquin's hologram suggested. "Feel. Remember the stories I told you, of worlds where all life sings in harmony, where each creature knows its place in the greater chorus." Alex closed their eyes, trying to recall. Fragments of memory surfaced, sitting on grandmother's lap, listening to tales of crystal forests where trees communicated through light, of desert nomads who could hear the thoughts of sand whales, of ancient guardians who tended the seeds of 1,000 worlds. Not just stories, teachings disguised as bedtime tales. Alex reached toward the interface, guided now by intuition as much as knowledge. Their fingers traced patterns in the air, adjusting energy flows, reinforcing weakened connections, damping dangerous oscillations. The world seed responded, its fractures beginning to heal, its pulsations becoming more regular. A sudden crash from above shattered the moment of progress. Through the ceiling of the chamber, a drilling apparatus broke through. showering them with crystal fragments. The drill retracted, and in its place appeared the helmeted face of one of Dr. Cho's mercenaries, followed by Cho herself. "Magnificent," she breathed, taking in the chamber and the world seed at its center. "Even more impressive than our projections." She descended through the opening on a mechanical harness, weapon drawn. The mercenary followed, training his rifle on Tarek while Cho focused on Alex. "Step away from the control interface," she ordered. "Our specialists will take over stabilization procedures." "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Alex warned. "The seed isn't just technology. It's a living entity. It's connected to the planet itself." "All the more valuable," Cho replied dismissively. "Imagine the applications: terraforming barren worlds, engineering new species, perhaps even weapons that could target specific genetic profiles while leaving infrastructure intact." Her eyes gleamed with ambition. "The Biowarfare Division will be particularly interested." "That is precisely why you cannot have it," the hologram of Merquin stated, its form growing brighter with apparent anger. Cho started, clearly surprised by the interactive hologram. "A consciousness backup," she realized. "Even better. We can extract the expertise along with the technology." She turned to the mercenary. "Prepare the containment unit for the crystal and see if you can download that hologram's data." "You'll destroy everything," Tariq said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "The house, the archive, the desert ecosystem, all will collapse without the seed." "Acceptable losses," Cho replied with a shrug. "The value of the technology far outweighs the preservation of one uninhabited desert region." Alex looked at the world seed, still only partially stabilized, then at the hologram of Merquin. The projection met their gaze with an expression of sad resignation, as if this moment had been foreseen long ago. "What defines a legacy?" "Alex?" the hologram asked softly. "Power or preservation? What will you choose to nurture, and what will you allow to be destroyed?" In that moment, Alex understood that this had always been a test, not one Merquin had designed deliberately, but one that inevitably came to all who held power. The same test Merquin herself must have faced countless times throughout her long life. Alex also realized that they were not simply Merquin's heir by blood or legal declaration. They were her philosophical heir, a scientist, yes, but also a guardian. Someone who could bridge the gap between knowledge and wisdom. "I won't let you take it," Alex said to Cho, standing protectively before the world seed. "Don't be foolish," Cho scoffed. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. Even if you somehow prevented us from taking the seed today, we would simply return with a larger force. Novacorp has resources you cannot imagine." "Perhaps," Alex conceded. "But you're assuming the seed can be taken at all." Before Cho could respond, Alex turned back to the interface and made a series of rapid adjustments. The world seed pulsed brightly, and throughout the chamber, new crystal formations began to grow, not randomly, but in a precise pattern that Alex somehow knew intuitively. "What are you doing?" Cho demanded, raising her weapon. "Ensuring the seed remains safe," Alex replied, continuing the manipulations. "Home! Activate emergency protocol Omega-7. The house responded immediately. Throughout the chamber, gravity fields warped, pinning Cho and her mercenary against the wall. The crystal growths accelerated, forming a lattice around the intruders, not killing them, but immobilizing them completely. "This is assault," Cho sputtered, struggling against the crystalline restraints. "Novacorp will have you prosecuted in every system." "I don't think so," Alex replied calmly, making a final adjustment to the interface. "Because as of this moment, you were never here." The world seed pulsed once more, and a wave of energy washed through the chamber. When it passed, Cho and the mercenary stared blankly, their expressions vacant. "Memory alteration," Tariq realized. "You've wiped their knowledge of this place." "Not entirely," Alex clarified. They'll remember coming to Far Rim 4 for a geological survey. They'll remember finding nothing of value and leaving. All evidence of their drilling equipment will be gone, consumed by Home to repair its damaged systems. Cho's eyes focused slowly, confusion evident. What? Where am I? You were caught in a sandstorm, Alex explained smoothly. Your team took shelter in an outer chamber. The spores you encountered caused temporary disorientation, but you'll recover fully once you leave the planet. Spores, Cho repeated vaguely, clearly struggling to piece together false memories that were being implanted by the World Seed's energy. Home will guide you back to your ship. Alex continued. I suggest immediate departure before the next storm front arrives. The crystal restraints receded, and Cho and her mercenary allowed themselves to be led docilely toward the exit, where Home had created a new passage that would take them directly to the surface. Once they were gone, Alex turned back to the interface, completing the stabilization process. The World Seed's fractures sealed completely. Its pulsations returned to a steady rhythm, and the energy column supporting it strengthened. You chose preservation. The hologram of Merquin observed. Was there ever any doubt? Alex asked. There is always doubt when power is involved. The hologram replied. But you have proven worthy of Home and its secrets. The projection gestured to the World Seed. However, a choice remains. The Seed has recognized you as its new guardian, but others will come seeking it, just as Novacorp did. What can we do to prevent that? There is a final security measure. The hologram explained. A psychic encryption that would lock the Seed's full potential behind a barrier that only a true descendant, guided by compassion rather than greed, could breach. At what cost? Alex asked, sensing there was more. The encryption key would be formed from your own memories, specifically your memories of Merquin. Those moments would be extracted and woven into the Seed's protective matrix. Alex felt a pang of loss at the thought. The memories of grandmother were already so few, so precious. You would forget her? Tariq asked, concerned. Not entirely, the hologram clarified. The emotional connections would remain, as would general knowledge of her existence. But the specific moments, the stories she told, the lessons she taught, the time you spent together, those would become part of the Seed's defense. Alex looked around the chamber, at the archive above, at the World Seed pulsing with the potential to nurture or destroy. This was Merquin's true legacy, not to Alex personally, but to the future. A repository of knowledge that could guide civilizations, preserve endangered ecosystems, and prevent the weaponization of life itself. Compared to that, what were a few childhood memories? I'll do it, Alex decided. The hologram of Merquin smiled with pride and perhaps a touch of sorrow. Home will guide you through the process. When it is complete, I too will fade. This fragment of consciousness was created solely to help you make this transition. Alex felt tears welling unexpectedly. I wish I had known you better. You will, the hologram promised. Not through memories, but through Home itself. Everything I was, everything I believed, is woven into its structure. In caring for it, you will come to know me more deeply than memories alone could allow. The holographic interface transformed, presenting a new set of controls. Alex reached out, guided by intuition, and began the encryption process. As they worked, specific memories surfaced, grandmother showing them how to identify different types of crystal formations, explaining how living architecture responded to emotion, describing the migrations of sand whales and their role in maintaining Far Rim 4's delicate ecosystem. With each memory that surfaced, Alex felt it fade from their own mind, becoming instead part of the complex energy pattern surrounding the World Seed. It was like watching pieces of oneself being woven into something greater, a sacrifice. Yes, but also a transformation. When the process was complete, The world seed pulsed with new vitality, its protective matrix now virtually impenetrable to anyone who did not share both Alex's genetic signature and their fundamental values. Home itself seemed to sigh with relief, its systems returning to optimal function. The hologram of Merquin had grown fainter during the process. Now it smiled one last time at Alex. "Remember," it said, its voice beginning to fade. "True power lies in empathy, in the ability to see the connections between all living things. This is your inheritance, far more valuable than any house or technology." With those words, the hologram dissolved into motes of light that were absorbed into the chamber walls. Home had integrated the last fragment of Merquin's consciousness, completing the transition of guardianship. Alex stood silent for a moment, feeling a curious mixture of loss and fulfillment. The specific memories of grandmother were gone, yet somehow her presence felt stronger than ever, suffusing the very air they breathed. "What will you do now?" Tarek asked quietly. Alex looked up at the archive above, then at the world seed pulsing with potential. "First, we repair whatever damage remains from the intrusion," they decided. "Then we begin the work Merquin would have wanted, using the seed to heal Farim IV's fading ecosystems rather than exploiting it for profit. The wind sailors will help," Tarek offered. "We have always been allies to the Keeper of Home." Together, they ascended from the seed chamber, leaving the heart of home secure once more. The path ahead would not be easy. Other corporations, other governments would eventually learn of the house's existence and seek its secrets. But with the world seed protected and home's defenses restored, Alex felt confident in their ability to preserve Merquin's legacy. In the days that followed, Dr. Cho and her team departed Farim IV, their memories altered, their drilling equipment consumed and repurposed by Home's self-repair systems. They left believing the planet held nothing of value, a perception that Home would reinforce for any other unwelcome visitors. Tariq introduced Alex to the other wind sailors, who accepted them cautiously at first, then with growing respect as they demonstrated their commitment to Farim IV's restoration. Together, they developed plans to expand Home's influence, using careful applications of the world seed's power to rejuvenate areas where crystal forests had withered and sand whale populations had declined. One evening, a week after the confrontation in the seed chamber, Alex stood on a balcony that Home had grown specifically for stargazing. Below, a newly created crystalline forest glittered in the light of the setting suns, its structures already attracting the attention of curious sand whales that breached the nearby dunes like massive, shimmering fish. Though Alex could no longer recall Merquin's specific teachings, they somehow knew exactly which crystal formations would attract the sand whales, which harmonics would encourage them to stay and breed, which nutrients would strengthen their distinctive hides. The knowledge remained, even if the memory of its acquisition was gone. In the end, Alex mused aloud, is legacy measured by what we build, or by what we choose not to destroy? Home didn't answer in words, but the crystalline walls pulsed once with warm light, a gesture that somehow conveyed both agreement and affection. And in that pulse, Alex felt the faintest echo of grandmother's presence, woven now into the very fabric of the living house, preserved not in memory but in ongoing creation. This, Alex realized, was the true inheritance, not ownership of a house, not access to powerful technology, but the opportunity to continue a work of preservation and balance that extended far beyond one lifetime. To be not just a scientist who studied life, but a guardian who nurtured it. As darkness fell and Farim IV's stars emerged, Alex made a silent promise to that legacy. The desert world would flourish again, the archive would continue to grow, and Home would remain a sanctuary of knowledge, open to those who sought understanding rather than power. Somewhere, beyond perception but not beyond influence, Merquin's spirit seemed to approve.